Are you a spiritual seeker? Somebody who thirsts for truth and knowledge? You're new on your spiritual awakening journey and you're just beginning to understand consciousness and awakening and self-realization, self-actualization, self-awareness. Well, this is all a very important part of the journey that I like to call level 1. And I want to talk about it. So let's just jump in. Well, what's up, guys? It's your girl Elle, and I realized that last week I made a video talking about level 2 spirituality, and I guess I should probably make a video talking about level 1 because that would make sense, right? Of course, we touch on what level 1 is in that video, but I figure we could go a little bit deeper. We could talk a little bit more about the awakening process, what it entails, what the awakening process really is all about, what it looks like, because that's what level 1 is. It's the awakening. It is the self-awareness to the level 2 practices, which is the integration and embodiment of the self-awareness and the awakening. But we can't get to level 2 without level 1, and level 2 can't be complete without level 1. And it's this beautiful infinity dance that we do between level 1 and level 2, the self-awareness and integration, the awakening and the embodiment. And so, I want to talk a little bit deeper about what the awakening process is like. I want to talk about the 2 major types of awakening that tend to occur in people that I've witnessed. And I want to leave you guys with a little snippet of how I think we're going to be experiencing mass awakening within the collective and what that means for us on a collective level as well as an individual level. So that being said, you guys, let us jump into this video and begin talking about the 2 different types of awakening that there is, because there are 2 distinct types of awakening. And one is, I would say, has probably been the most common form of awakening for the last, couple hundred years. And that's somebody wants just to expand their intellectual understanding of life. And so what happens is the awakening process takes place over about, I'd say, 10 to 20 years. And what happens is this person consumes a lot of literature. They might travel the world and have these very transcendental experiences through traveling. They might have some thought-provoking aha moments in literature. They might go to some seminars, take some courses, do some workshops, and each time they are expanding their intellectual understanding of life, and it's causing them to question things, and it's causing them to view things differently. And this process of awakening to one's true self is slow burning, because you get glimmers of the infinite intensity that is you, that is life. You get to taste it in each seminar, in each book, in each workshop, in the spiritual practices. So the spiritual practices will actually give us more of these tastes of the divine. So when we take a look at psychedelics, meditation, breath work, these are all beautiful tools that allow us to taste the divine, to give us a glimmer and a moment of what it is to be this infinite power. But oftentimes it doesn't actually have us fully wake up. And what happens is we become the spiritual seeker, and we seek for more information and more knowledge through the books and the seminars and through the breath work and the psychedelics. And we're seeking. This is where the spiritual seeker is born, right? And it's a very important part of the journey, and we're going to talk about that. The second type of awakening that I see happen is what I call the initiation. So the first one we'll call the gradual awakening, and the second one we'll call the initiation. This is oftentimes what happens when somebody has experienced so much pain and suffering in their lives that it forces the ego to break free and become conscious. So oftentimes this is somebody who's been an addict, severely abused, whether that was childhood SA, normal adult SA, abusive relationship, being an addict, somebody who's experienced such depth of pain and turmoil. This could also be somebody who experienced death of a loved one at a young age, or just in general, where there's some type of shock to the system that forces you awake. And what happens is this opens the crown and information begins to flood through the body. And in that moment, oftentimes the gradual awakener, what they would have learned in about 5 to 10 years, a person who has the initiation gets flooded with that 5 to 10 years worth of information almost overnight. It is this instantaneous awakening that we begin to integrate over time. A lot of people will oftentimes call this a Kundalini awakening. I think that there are some differences with a Kundalini awakening versus that, but there tends to be that overlay. But those are the two major types of awakening, is this initiation, which comes from deep pain and suffering, or this gradual seeking of information. Either way, both parties begin the seeking and the learning process. I'm just demonstrating how one person may or may not wake up versus another. And both have a very different effect on the body and the psyche as well. When somebody has a shock initiation, this can cause cognitive dissonance. This can cause a fracture in someone's psyche, and it can actually be a very traumatic experience. It can be very disillusioned. You can be very disillusioned. It can be disorienting, confusing, and not a good time. Whereas people who are gradually learning aren't having as much of that shock factor. And so it's a gradual, over time, slow integration, whereas the initiation, it can be a deep shock to the body and a deep shock to the system, because you're just waking up and realizing that everything you've ever been taught, everything you've ever been told is a complete lie. And everything that you've ever thought about yourself is a complete lie. And it is a very disorientating experience. So that brings me to talking about that type of awakening and what's really happening there. What's happening when we begin to wake up? So when we begin to wake up, one of the first things that people come into contact with first is realizing that everything you've been told is a lie. Our human history, a lot of science, you realize that you've been lied to and indoctrinated your whole life by society and people who were supposed to protect you, who were supposed to be guiding you, who we've all put our faith into. We begin to realize that everything we've ever been told about ourselves, personally and individually, whether that be by our caretakers, our parents, formative people in our lives, or even ourselves, has been a lie. And so this is a deeply disorientating time. And again, people who have the gradual experience, that happens over time for them, but it still happens. And this whole process of awakening and healing, it's not linear. Sometimes somebody might do some of level 2, some of level 1. Some people might take longer in their dark night of the soul than others. You might have multiple dark nights of the soul. You might have, it's however it wants to manifest and show up in your life, because nothing in this life is linear. Everything is cyclical, comes in cycles, comes in layers, in this beautiful spiral. And then sometimes we spiral back up and spiral back down. Sometimes we're here, sometimes we're there. And nobody really has the answers at the end of the day. But when we take a look at awakening and what's really happening, is more than 90% of the population is operating on autopilot. This is what people nowadays are calling NPCs. These are people that do not form their own thoughts and opinions. And what they're doing is they are acting, thinking, and feeling based on perceptual programs within their body, programs that were programmed by either society or by their parents generationally. And these programs sit in their subconscious mind. And what people don't realize is that when you're not awake, so when you're still asleep, 90% of your life is operated in your subconscious mind. This means 90% of your thoughts, your feelings, your actions that most people are having day to day is a program that's playing on repeat, and they are just walking through life completely unconscious, completely unaware and on autopilot. So when we begin to wake up, what happens is we're no longer operating from that 90%. Maybe we're operating now more at 40, 50% of conscious awareness. Because the truth is there's a deep level amount of work that needs to go in for you to be operating at a 90% consciousness level. But in the beginning, you become about 40, 50% aware, 30, 40, 50% aware. And this is a shock to the system. It's basically like learning to eat, walk, think, breathe, exist for the first time. It's like being born again, or rather being born for the first time. And this is a really hard experience for a lot of people. But this is all what comes with the waking up process. And this is why doing the work is so important. And what do I mean by doing the work? What I mean is going in and consciously choosing to reprogram yourself with new programs, healthier programs, right? So this is going in and looking at your childhood wounds. This is looking at why you do what you do, why you think the way you think. Where does this come from? What are your belief systems? What are the programs that you have installed? And which ones do you want to uninstall? And which ones do you want to reinstall? And this is a very important part of everyone's evolutionary journey. It's a necessary part of the journey. And things like meditation and breath work and yoga and mantras and EFT tapping and journaling and psychedelics all allow us access to a depth of self-awareness and self-understanding. It is a tool that allows us to remain in a state of conscious awareness. It allows us to dig deeper into the truth of things, because remember, everything we've been told is a lie about how humans operate, human history, science, everything. Everything you've ever been taught is a complete lie. And so we have to look internally for the answers. We have to start listening to that voice, that higher self, that gut within us. We have to start formulating our own thoughts, our own opinions. We have to start really digging deep. And so all of these level 1 tools like meditation, psychedelics, breathwork, yoga, journaling really help assist us in this rebirthing, this redevelopment, this coming online for the first time process. And these are all very necessary parts of the journey. Necessary parts of your evolutionary journey. And what level 2 is, and I'll link that down below in case you haven't seen that yet, is the embodiment and integration of all the spiritual seeking. It's you've become awake. Now, what do you do with this? What do you do with being awake now? And so you can check that out. I'll link that below. But level 1 is a very, very important part of the process. Most people don't begin to actually wake up until after their first Saturn return, especially for the younger generation. Some of the older generations, like baby boomer era, most of them are waking up in their 60s, so during their second Saturn return. Some of the Gen Xers hit it in about their 40s, so in between their Saturn returns. Millennials, a lot of them early 30s around their first Saturn return. Some of the Gen Zs are having that gradual awakening, and they've been having that since they were probably about 16. Just wait till they hit their first Saturn return. A lot of them, it's going to be a kapow, rude awakening. Because that's the thing too. Just because you intellectually understand things in literature, you intellectually understand things that you've heard in a seminar and things like that, you might not actually be awake. To be conscious and to be awake is to be in control of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions, meaning that you're making conscious choices every day. And this takes practice. This is why level 1 is so important. But this is also part of level 2, which is the integration. That is the practice. Practice is integration. It is embodiment. And so when we get an aha moment from yoga or meditation or breath work or psychedelics, that aha moment we're meant to take, put into practice. And what this does is it creates a new identity for us. It creates a new program for our system. And level 1 is about seeking, learning, investigating which practices we want to apply. Who is it that we want to be now that we have a choice in who we want to be? How is it that we want to act? So it's this very important investigative stage of the journey. And like I talk about in level 2, it's this beautiful dance between the two. It's self-awareness and integration, awakening and embodiment. It's this beautiful, infinite loop of learning and integrating, awakening and consciousness. And the further you get on this journey, because once you're awake, you're constantly going to go through a bunch of mini awakenings the rest of your life. Once you're actually awake, you will experience many awakenings. You will also be on this awakening journey for the rest of your life. You'll be on a healing journey the rest of your life because everything now moves in layers and it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And the longer you're on this journey, the deeper it goes. The more you begin to learn. And then the more you begin to embody and integrate. And the more you begin to learn. And it's this like infinite depth. I mean, infinite. This is where like the most profound, intimate relationship with life comes from, is this constant seeking and embodiment, seeking and embodiment, seeking and embodiment, right? It's a normal part of the journey. Learning and growing, essentially, but you get to choose what that learning and growing is for you. So waking up is this very disorienting, very confusing, oftentimes very isolating experience because we're often the only ones in our family and friend group who really go through this. And so for anyone who is experiencing this, I want you to know that it can feel like borderline psychosis and that it is normal what you're experiencing. It is a normal reaction to want to grieve or to need to grieve after waking up because you've been gaslit and lied to your whole life. And so those 5 stages of grieving: denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and acceptance. I want you to know that it's normal to be angry. It's normal to be confused. It's normal to feel alone and crazy. It is something we all go through. Find your people. Don't do this alone. You don't have to do this alone. Also, it's not ever your job to wake other people up. You cannot do that. It's actually not possible. People will wake up when they're ready. People will wake up when it's their time. The greatest service that you can do for humanity is to focus on your own journey, to focus on your own healing, your own level 1 understanding of self-awareness and self-actualization, and then embodiment and integration. The single most important thing you can do is continue to grow and evolve into a beautiful human being yourself, and then allow others to witness that growth. That is the single greatest service that you can do. And we're going to be experiencing this on a mass level. A lot of people are not psychologically prepared for what is about ready to come. We're about ready to experience this type of awakening in the millions. The last few years, the last 4 or 5 years, we've been experiencing people waking up in the tens of thousands, and that has been this beautiful experience that has also slowly been putting us into a collective dark night of the soul, and we're about ready to hit the peak of that because we're about ready to have people go through this awakening process that I'm talking about in the millions, because there is going to be information released in the coming years, especially next year, that is going to psychologically F people up. And most people are not psychologically prepared for what's about ready to come. And it's going to be so difficult that this mass psychosis is actually going to fracture people's psyches and cause trauma that they're going to have to unravel for potentially years to come. The information that is going to come out, the type of chaos that we're going to have to experience as a collective together is going to be so intense. I mean, so intense. And the reason for that is because, what did I mention in the beginning of the video? You can either have a gradual awakening or you can have a shock factor awakening. And the truth is as a collective, we need people to wake up, and we need them to wake up now because the future of the human race depends on it. The direction in which we are going is sad and does not have a good outcome. But the more that people wake up, more people decide to start doing this healing work, the more that we have a fighting chance of surviving this together as a human race. And I do not say this to scare anybody. I do not say this to be a fearmonger. I say this because it's realistic and it's something that we all need to be prepared for. And even the most seasoned vets, I mean, people that have been doing this for a long time, I don't even think that they're fully prepared for what is coming. Because what our brothers and sisters experience, we experience. We are not separate. We are one. And so what everyone else is going to be experiencing on a collective level, we are also going to be feeling that ripple effect. And for those of us that have been on this journey for a long time and have been through enough dark nights of the soul and healing and have been doing this anchoring into certain timelines kind of work, we're on the front lines, having to hold that energy, having to be that space for people to come to when they start to wake up. We're going to be experiencing mass poverty, mass suicide, because people aren't going to be able to handle it. There's going to be an intense financial crash so that our systems can reset. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to force people. So my camera had run out of space, and I'm going to take that as a sign because things in that conversation were about ready to really heat up, and maybe it's not time to be talking specifically and exclusively about some of those things. So I'm going to take that as a sign, but I will conclude this video with many of us think we're awake. Many of us are not. And I think the easiest way for you to tell whether you were awake and in level 1 is how conscious are your choices? Are you choosing your thoughts? Are you choosing your actions? And are you choosing how you're showing up in life? Are you aware that you exist and are on this planet? All right, guys, that's it for today.